Hey guys, what's up? This is Jordan Crook with TechCrunch, and I am here with John Backus, who is a co-founder and managing partner at New Atlantic Ventures. Hello.
Good to be here.
Thanks for coming in. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
So you're based in DC. You've been doing this for a really long time at a number of different firms. In fact, you overlapped with Romney at Bain, right?
I did.
So it's been a long time. And I guess I just want to talk to you and kind of get your feel for what we're supposed to expect in 2013 in terms of trends and stuff like that. What was your What do you think was like the biggest development in technology over 2012 and last year?
Well, I would say the most interesting thing in 2012 was the perceived shift from consumer technologies to enterprise technologies. VCs have been talking about it a lot. I think it's a fake switch because I think what people really care about are profits. And I think what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years is we've seen ridiculously inflated numbers in the consumer segment of number of app downloads, number of users, all sorts of stuff. Companies with millions of these, but no activity. So I think people have started saying, I care a lot more about the revenue a company's generating, and it's easier to see that in the enterprise space.
Absolutely. Let's move a little bit to the consumer side. I want to talk to you about some of the new stuff that's coming out that we expect to see in 2013. One of those things is Google Glass. We just saw a video of the UI kind of for the first time. We're also expecting Apple to come out with like a watch, you know, that would be an accessory or a companion device to the iPhone or the iPad. A lot of wearable stuff. And to me that speaks of a new ecosystem. What are some interesting things that you expect to come out of these new kind of types of computers that we'll be carrying around?
Well, I think we're going to see, you know, things like Google Glasses, you know, Go Glass, and see what happens there. You're going to see watches. We already see wearable biometrics that integrate with your smartphone that'll upload, you know, a run or an exercise or like a pedometer that you can do. I think the interesting thing that's going to happen there is the quantity of data that's collected. What do you do with it? So you think of the data that can be collected with Google Glass. I mean, if I'm walking around, you know, wearing this all the time, I could be capturing, in theory, my entire life. But what am I going to do with that?
Right.
You know, I can't even play back my 30-second video clips of my kids skiing down the ski slopes anywhere.
Right.
So I think people have to go beyond the wearable technology and figure out what you're going to do with it.
So where do you see stuff like Google Glass particularly fitting in? Because the way I see it is we have this natural extension of all these consumer-facing apps that we'll just have to have, right? We have to have Netflix on Google Glass. I mean, how can you not walk around watching House of Cards? We have to have Facebook and Twitter. Those are just the ways that our mind works in terms of, okay, well, if I'm going from a smartphone to a wearable, I'm going to have all that same stuff, right? But to me, it seems like places like education or health that have long been ignored largely by the media and by venture, I see that kind of being a huge opportunity for them. I mean, what ways do you think that we might see, you know, health and education particularly benefit from something like wearable?
Well, I think the first thing you're going to see on wearables is instead of people walking around like this in a crosswalk and, you know, ignoring things, they're going to be looking, you know, head straight up and, you know, reading their Facebook pages and just walk into brick walls, you know, with their head straight up. So I think that's going to be a new phenomenon we're going to see. I think in the education world, I mean, I think Google Glass, no one's figured out what it might mean for the education world, but what we're seeing happen right now is so transformational and it's coming so fast. I mean, we've had the same education system for thousands of years where the wise professor imparts knowledge into the empty vessel students out there and they sit there, you know, thirsting for it. What's happening now is the kids in the classroom collectively know more than the professor does. And I think what we're finding is that the courses and the professors at a particular school are a lot less relevant. It's all about the community. And the challenge for colleges is going to be, how do I first acknowledge that there is a better economics professor out there on the internet than there is in my school? And how do I let my kids take that course and get credit for it? So I think the whole education system is being turned upside down, and it's going to happen in the next generation. You know, in the healthcare system, you know, we have a completely screwed up system. The Affordable Care Act did a great thing by fixing screwed up insurance mandates, by expanding entitlement and access to insurance. It did nothing to change the way that care is delivered. I mean, the fact that a primary care doctor sees 35 patients a day for 7 minutes each is awful, because you walk in and they're not treating you, they're treating the thing that's on the sheet that the nurse wrote down, and then they kick you out and go on to the next one. That's got to change fundamentally. and it's going to change with technology.
Right. Absolutely. Totally agree. So that's a ways in the future. Let's talk about a shift that's happening right now and in the living room. So we've got a lot happening around TV. We've got, obviously cable providers have been gouging for a while, and then we've got all these new services coming in, Hulu Plus, Netflix, Aereo. They all deliver their various libraries and or instant streaming, cloud DVR services. A lot's happening. But you can't get everything on these on one of these new services. You have to get the media player, and then you have to get all the services. Do you ever think there's going to be a time when one on-demand provider can offer the whole array of what you want, or perhaps a customizable array of what you want? You can choose up to 50 shows for this much a month and get them all. I mean, do you think that that's possible, or is it always going to be a battle of the content providers and the licensors and all that stuff?
Well, so technology can do a lot more than the legal framework will let us do.
Right.
The legal framework is stupidly complicated and needs to be changed. I think the biggest change that I've seen in the last 20 years is what I call a television. When I grew up, a television was the box that we watched. My kids don't think of that as the television. They think of the content as television. And the television, can be a smartphone, can be a tablet, can be anything. So what's going to happen is, and ESPN is pioneering this now. If you've checked out the ESPN Go app, if you subscribe to a cable operator that offers ESPN, I can now watch any ESPN channel on my iPad or on my iPhone anywhere in the country.
Wow.
So that's where it's going to go. But you think of those 500 channels are all going to have to be consumer marketing companies. How do they do that? They don't have that DNA. That's going to be really interesting to watch.
So the last thing that I want to talk to you about, you're based in DC. I know that you have a lot of experience when it comes to policy legislation. And Obama brought up in the State of the Union address that the hackers and all of the national and international hacking scandals that are happening right now are, we can't let it happen anymore, and there's going to be action against that. What do you think that's going to look like? I mean, we have to consider the fact that so much of our intellectual and engineering talent comes from Asia, and that also seems to be the prime target of who is making these attacks on the U.S. So there's kind of a little bit of a dynamic there that's difficult. How do you think that this is going to play out in the next year?
Well, I don't think it's going to play out in the next year. I think it's going to take a long time to play out, because in the cyber world, basically you have to play offense and you have to play defense. And we've done a lousy job as a country, both as a country and as individual companies within that, playing defense. The current attacks are spear phishing attacks, which basically go on human weakness. I mean, if I were to be a bad hacker and wanted to infect your computer, I'd send you a fake LinkedIn invite from your boss's boss, who wants to friend you on LinkedIn, and you'd be like, oh, that's cool. You're going to click on the link and you're going to get infected, and you're never going to know it because they're going to redirect you to the actual site. And that's what's happening right now. The problem is, all of our data resides within companies. 20 years ago, if you wanted to steal a corporate secret, you actually had to have a human being walk into a building and go find a file cabinet and steal the stuff. Now you don't even think of it as theft when someone steals something online.
Right.
So from a defensive perspective, we have to build much bigger fences, and we have to educate employees on, stupid things to do or smart things to do. But the interesting thing is going to be what we do as a government offensively. And whoever invented, and no government admits it yet, but the Stuxnet virus that infected the centrifuges in Iran, the fire or the flame viruses that infected the computers and the energy industry in Iran, that's offensive cyber warfare. And we have that capability as a country. Whether we use it or not, or how we use it, is another question.
Right.
Because in a lot of ways, from a policy perspective, it's a declaration of war. The New York Times just this week ran that big article about, this one facility, part of the Chinese army that's responsible for almost all of the hacking attacks on companies in the United States. As a country, we could go and launch a cyber attack on that and shut them down and infect their computers. But from a policy perspective, do we really want to declare war on China?
Interesting. Do we?
I think elected officials would say no.
Right.
They're our biggest trading partner right now.
Absolutely.
So how do you do that?
It's very touchy. Well, thank you so much for coming in, John. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
All right, that's it for John Backus.